Welcome and thanks for joining us, Dr. Vivian.
Just Vivian. It's nice to see you, Ian.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So we've got some questions, and first of all, we'd like to hear how you first got interested in social impact and corporate citizenship.
Sure. And, just first, thank you for, creating this space and place. I was taking notes because I do hope, and I know I'll learn just as much from you all, y'all, groups of y'alls, as you will, from me. And I love the, creating a more just, caring, and equitable world together. And I think, so when you say, how did you get interested in corporate citizenship? I didn't know I didn't know what that was when I graduated college. It was certainly nothing that I was, got a degree in to do or even knew, kind of existed. I grew up in Tucker, right, which is right outside Atlanta. Went to Tucker High School. So anyone can raise their hand in the chat if you are also from a small town in right outside the city. I went to UGA. My dad went to Tech, and he'll never forgive me for not. But I didn't get in, no. And then I joined the Navy, and I served on active duty and in the reserves. My husband was in the Navy. We had a few kids. We had moved a few times, went through a few deployments. And my husband just, retired last year, so we were able to move back into Atlanta. But, First Data, now Fiserv, has been headquartered in Atlanta. And so I've always kept my, kind of Atlanta Tucker roots. And I would say that the same with my idea for, social impact and corporate citizenship. Even when I joined the Navy out of college, it was, to be part of something that was bigger than Tucker, to be bigger than Georgia. My family had served in the Navy, and so that seemed like a good way to, to do something to serve the country, to serve my country. And then when I transitioned out, and my husband was on active duty, I wanted to, and then we had, small kids at home, very small, and I wanted to show that I was still moving forward. Old Dominion University is one of the most populated for students using their GI Bill in the nation, if you can believe that, because it's in Norfolk. And so I was looking at programs, and they had a program in public administration at the business school. And I had heard of public administration because the dean of students, when I was in college, had his Ph.D. in public administration. And so I thought, if I'm not working in the Navy, I can do something in, the federal government or state government, something in the government, because I thought that was how, I could help people. Didn't know exactly how I wanted to help them, but that I wanted to help them. And so, got my PhD in public administration, and actually my dissertation was on public service motivation. So what, antecedents, what things, variables that students, young people, what do they experience that incentivizes them to want to serve the public? And what I found, was, and what the literature, in public service motivation has found since, is that maybe, citizens can have these values and want to create a more just, equitable world, and might not see the government as the way to do that, might see it themselves as social entrepreneurs, and then, turn up on the private sector, like I did. So all that, short story long, to say that, I think the North Star of really what, has kept me connected to the idea of whether you call it corporate citizenship or social impact or ESG, is really just this idea of a patriotism of benevolence. And that's just a sociologist term, that's really just a patriotism that's deeply rooted in the recognition of kind of love of and responsibility towards others' well-being. And I definitely think, every position that I've had, whether, joining the Navy, I started a nonprofit after the Navy before coming over to the private sector side to connect military families. And even now on the private sector side, I think no matter where anyone is or what sector or what industry, you go into, you can have that North Star of this kind of patriotism of benevolence that allows you to serve from whatever seat you're in. And so that's my, again, short story long view of corporate citizenship is really doing well by doing good, and that the private sector not only has the opportunity or not only has really the obligation, because we do socialize a lot of the cost and privatize a lot of the benefit of a lot of things. And so on the, we benefit from that. So we have an obligation, but I think there's also an opportunity, and that companies that choose to be corporate citizens and all that entails, really also though get that return on investment, return on inclusion, that pays dividends down the road. So it's really self-interest rightly understood. Because we're in a business school, so.
Right. So can you tell us what a day in the life is like for a head of corporate citizenship?
So on good days, right, it's being here with someone like you, and talking, just kind of evangelizing for what, having a platform to do well by, and to do good by. I think it's a lot of being a systems thinker, and I know the engineers are going to love this. It's a lot of engineering. Behind the scenes engineering, and having sociological imagination to see how one individual fits in regard to the collective, and how the collective impacts the ecosystem, and when you're looking at macro or micro, how all the players work together. I could be defending a budget on spend, to one group, or I could be talking to students on, why come into what corporate citizenship is, and or what a fintech is, and how you can do well by doing good. It's think big, act small, move quick, is our motto, and being very comfortable with being uncomfortable, because even before this year, which is, I'm not going to use the word unprecedented because everyone is using that word. I mean, I think the last unfathomable is I think where we need to be now, because the first 6 months were unprecedented. Now we're in completely uncharted territory, but I do think there's an opportunity in that to build whatever we're building back, our go forward, our next normal, our new normal. We can look at it with more of an empathetic eye, right? And even in the way we're rebuilding, we can do it in a way that is structurally more inclusive and structurally more empathetic, to recognize that individuals on our team, that work with us, have their own lives. That everyone, whether you're single or married or have kids or a caregiver or struggling with anything, we're seeing that now in a way that perhaps we haven't given voice to before. I mean, we're in each other's houses right now. Of course, I was gonna say I cleaned mine. This is like the best wall in the entire house, but it's still, we're at a place now where I think it's always been there, but potentially, some companies haven't talked about as much with their employee engagement and community engagement. But we'll only make it through this if we're helping each other.
Definitely. So you've been with First Data, now Fiserv, for about 7 years now. Can you tell us how you shaped the employee experience during that time?
Yeah, I think we've been through, when I got hired to come to First Data before our merger, and as I'm saying this, I'm also aware of there's a lot of early career professionals, and expect that you'll have several, the trend, it's not, I hate using words like normal, because I feel like that's really just a setting on the dryer. But in a normal distribution or a normal evolution of your career, the maybe past year's expectation is that you would go with one company, stay there, and then retire there. And that's just not the case anymore. And so many of you will go through, many companies, and that's, that's the way of the workforce today. So having come to First Data from a nonprofit, it was a leap. It was, I think, a little bit of a leap of faith for my boss who brought me on, because he knew, they were starting we were starting a military program. And even though I didn't know, when I think of SEC, I think of, the Southeastern Conference, not necessarily the Security Exchange Commission, although now I do. But, I didn't know what a fintech was. I didn't know, Fortune 500, but I did know subject matter, expert on the military community. I knew how to engage with them, how to find, how to locate them, what their challenges and obstacles for transitioning were. And we built a really good program, but it took very early kind of punctuated or mitigated, risks to go out on some limbs to say, we're going to do this program. We're going to identify this, population. We're going to create programs, not to give them a handout, but to give them not even a hand up, just open the door. And again, so that people like me would see ourselves, at Fiserv, or, First Data back then. And I think that how we started our military programming and looking at the entire person holistically and looking at human capital management, and the idea that, you treat people commensurate with the level of trust they give you as an employee, and to become an employer of choice, to reduce barriers for, veterans. We created, military guard and reserve leave policy so that service members wouldn't have to choose between serving their country or working at First Data, because no company wins that at the end, right? You lose the discretionary effort, you lose, the trust, the engagement, and how we did that. Then, it really started all of our diversity and inclusion. The way that we looked at reducing obstacles, creating bridges, and expanding the aperture for access, because we know that, talent is distributed naturally among the population, but what's not always is access and opportunity. And in Atlanta, we have such a great, we work with the Russell Center of Innovation, and Jay Bailey says, it's the difference between Bankhead and Buckhead. And if our policies, procedures, and systems are set up to disallow someone from seeing themselves, reflected in our leaderships and our clients and our community, then that's on us, and then we lose out on that talent. So it was, we looked at pay equity for women, or we looked at paid parental leave, or we looked at domestic partner coverage, anything that someone couldn't bring their whole selves to work, or it caused them, undue stress above and beyond what, we go through on a normal day of just working, anything that would cause someone to question whether they belong. We looked at what programming we have, what policies we have, what philanthropy what community groups we worked at. And that's really how we evolved our corporate citizenship efforts, so that it's not any point in time, it's not any set of numbers that we're trying to get to, but it's a philosophy of, creating an equitable opportunity for everyone to join, contribute, belong, and progress, whether it's our associates, our clients, or the communities that we engage with. It's that total, employer value proposition. And I think diversity is a fact, and inclusion is a choice. And so when you ask about how our, employee experience during that time, I've really, done my best. I'm thankful every day of the job that I have. I'm thankful that someone took a leap of faith in me, and I, want to earn that every day. And I don't think I'm unique in that. I think, when a veteran gets hired, or a woman gets hired, anyone who maybe sees themselves on the opposite side or as an other, when we get into a position where we have, power, we automatically want to use that power to expand opportunity for others. And that's when we get trust, and we get engagement, and you get energy, and those high performing teams that, make companies successful.
So what is it about Fiserv and the fintech space in particular that allows you to create engaging D&I curriculum and fulfilling employee experiences?
So, definitely leadership from the top, but also leadership from the bottom, like leadership inclusion starts with I for a reason, because it's, inevitably an individual act. And it's, I have two boys, and when my oldest was going through middle school and they were talking about bullying, and they talked about being a bystander or being an upstander. And I think that, we have a lot of upstanders, but you have to create a space for that and hold a place for someone and, to be an upstander. And you have to have, trainings and create opportunities for courageous conversations. You have to have psychological safety. And I see in the chat, they're like, oh, I love the diversity as a fact, inclusion is a choice. I heard that, diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And then belonging is like dancing like no one's watching you. But I didn't make that one up. That's Verna Myers from Netflix, who is just obviously a way with words. The only thing now I would say is maybe it's like TikToking, like no one's watching you, or maybe like everyone's watching you, since that's the point. But we have created upstanders, and we've created a space for that purposefully, knowing that our CEO Frank Bisignano says often, that we don't just have the obligation, we have the opportunity to do good, and companies can do well and do better when they include, not just economic return on investment, but, like long-term. When we talk about sustainability, it's not just about the environment in the way of like reuse, reduce, recycle. It's the environment of talent. It's a renewable, and when we talk about civic literacy and civic engagement and patriotism, they're like the most renewable resource that we have not even as a company, but as a country. And the more that we flex those and, just kind of allow for that, what's the thing when the water goes between the cells? I obviously didn't do well in science, but when we allow for that passion to be pursued at work with a purpose, that's where you get success, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. And right now with so much happening with this, global pandemic, we have social unrest and a very real reckoning of systematic racism and a dialogue on human rights and how that's played out, certainly within Atlanta, certainly within the U.S., but even globally. I know, our programs and the feedback that we're getting from our associates globally. And so we're at an inflection point where, I said our recovery efforts that we're creating right now, we're in like uncharted territory. This is, very much like a Stephen King novel where we can choose any way forward. And not all of his endings are bad. That's why I have to reference him, because, we're forging this new inclusive global economy together where we can come out together better. We can move, and that's where our Forward Together efforts kind of came from, is that, we want small businesses to survive this, but we also want them to thrive and be more resilient and, kind of smarter, safer, faster, stronger on the other side of it. And I would say the same for people, for humans, for humanity. And certainly the ones that, we're all engaging with on a daily basis. Our employee resource groups have played a huge role in our associate engagement experience. They help us to draft policies. They, help us engage new markets, like nationally, regionally. They provide opportunities for meaningful engagement, for networking, for internal mobility. Anne, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask if you attended any R&G event, or we did move virtual as soon as, we had to. But if you want to say that you did, that would be amazing. But that's something that, I hope when you do onboard, that is part of the onboarding, is knowing these are just kind of the, the buffet of things that we have for you to come onto the Fiserv team and feel like you can be at your best, because we're empowering you, we're resourcing you, and we're creating, all of that in an environment of trust where you feel like not just tolerated, but, celebrated and valued, because that's, in fintech, or in innovation, in the innovation space, you have to be vulnerable to being wrong, and that's hard. And to do that, you need trust, and progress moves at the speed of trust.
Yeah. So I joined YoPro, the Young Professionals. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think there was a actual meeting during had a pretty short internship, but there was, like you said, a full buffet, and you can join any as an advocate or however. So really enjoyed that part of the experience. So over the summer, talking about my summer experience, I heard about a number of exciting programs to help local minority-owned small businesses. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about what Fiserv has been doing to help the community through these difficult times.
Yeah, this one's one of my favorites, just because it's such a, epitome of good, corporate citizenship, because it really does allow us to use our first best use of our resources towards, creating solutions for, a challenge for our clients, while also, with an eye towards that longer term and ecosphere. And we have this global platform to do good for, and it also engages our associates because they volunteer their subject matter expertise, and for our communities, because we're supporting these regional and national ecosystems for small, minority, and Black-owned businesses, whether they're incubators or aggregators, accelerators, or chambers of commerce, because we know that Black-owned businesses have been, and minority-owned businesses have been disproportionately affected by COVID, and just we also know that so goes small business, kind of so goes the economy, and our ability to recover, because I think it's like 99% of all businesses are small businesses. And I always, small business is big business. And we say that a lot because of, supplier diversity, and you start small. And I mean, every Walmart started as just, one or two, small family-owned business. And so we want to help all small businesses, start, thrive, grow. And what they need right now is a plan. They need some direct intervention with, so that's where our back to business grants come from. And then they need, but more than that, they need wraparound, it's the access afterwards. It's the connection to networks of peers and mentors and coaches and resource providers and, subject matter experts. So we're really, when I was talking earlier about like creating structural, financial or structural inclusion, that's also structural financial inclusion. It's the opportunity to accelerate collective community efforts and, also elevate our own diversity and inclusion efforts, so that, the team members that we are sending into communities look like the people in the communities that we're sending them there to, and they know their challenges, they know their obstacles, they know how to, they know our products and services and technology, but they also know our financial institution, our FI partners, also our enterprise clients, to say this is the buffet resources that we can provide for technology, coaching, capital, that'll really truly fuel the growth of communities. And I kind of, and sustainable business, which I kind of skipped over the biggest part of that, which was the grant program, but we did commit to $10 million to small, diverse, small minority and Black-owned businesses in the form of grants and then community investment. And so the grants will go directly to small businesses. So if you, so in Atlanta is one of our cities, and so it occurs to me, I don't know the website, but I can look it up and share it, so that if anyone on this call is an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, or has a favorite bakery, sub shop, dry cleaners, that you're using and want to support, you can encourage them to apply for the grants in the Atlanta area. But the truly kind of magical thing about turning this moment into a movement is that we're really looking to do the right thing, right, to help these small businesses that have been, devastated by COVID. Some of the numbers were that 40% of small Black-owned businesses won't survive COVID, could not if they're, without direct intervention. And so we're doing the right thing, but we're doing it the right way, which is, we're locating, and, so here in Atlanta, for example, our community partners are, the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Georgia Chamber, the Atlanta Black Chamber, Atlanta Village Market, which I still haven't even gotten to get to with, since COVID. But, the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I mean, we have such a treasure trove. There's a reason why, we call Atlanta Transaction Alley as a, foil for Silicon Valley. And it's, I've lived in several cities across the country, and in DC, and, I travel to New York often, but Atlanta, we're where all the money flows through. We're the number one city for startups. Georgia has, we have manufacturing, we have agriculture, we have film, we have fintech, we have fine arts. I mean, this is, I think the Metro Atlanta Chamber says it best when they say, we want people to come for the career and stay for the hustle. Or some, I love we have so much going on here. This is the first time in 20 years I've been able to choose where to live that some Navy detailer hasn't told us. And I dragged my husband, who's a Northerner, but hates winters, down here. This is where we've built our, forever home. And I want to do that for other, either young who are, you're in school, you're choosing where you're going to stay. I hope you stay in Atlanta. We need you. I hope you, maybe get OTP, if you need, but Georgia has so much to offer. I hope that we, grow talent, recruit talent from other states, and then keep it here, because I think we have a lot. We have a very strong foundation, and we have a lot to build on.
So what advice would you give to students and young professionals trying to pursue a career in sustainable business?
Ooh, this is where that, reverse mentoring comes in. What, because I would say that, I was not, when I got out of college, was not looking to get into corporate citizenship or sustainability. I think now, sustainability, supplier diversity, procurement, talent acquisition, HR, but now that I'm in it, I see so many paths to it, which is good news. Right. But I think, I would always revert, just because, I think your first job out of school teaches you, that's when it's like it's the same reason why your favorite radio station, the music that you tend to listen to right now, is the music that you listened to when you were 13. So think of that. That's what you're going to be playing to your kids. But it's because, there's some inflection points in your life. I think, when I was in the military, they gave me way more responsibility than they probably should have at such a young age. They entrusted in me a lot. The experience that I gained from that at a very early age taught me that, I am only as strong as my weakest link, whether that's, myself or another person that I need to help, because we together are a team, and we'll only be successful if we're all successful. So I would say that is, whether it's sustainability or finance or, operations or security, there's kind of four things that I always kind of revert to based on my military experience. And, so resilience, kind of that learned optimism. We gain experience and resilience through through overcoming obstacles. It's literally the only way. It doesn't feel good while you're doing it, but I don't know any other way to develop, learned optimism in the face of success. That's not hard when you're successful. It's hard to get up when you fail. It's hard to, overcome being uncomfortable with something and navigate ambiguity, but that's really the only way to gain competence. So I would, lean into that. I've learned that, in 2020 is kind of like, that's kind of just the tag we all need to say. I mean, you can't control a lot. You couldn't control, the world is ambiguous. The world is hard to navigate without a global pandemic. And so when you can't show up with control, and, the younger you are, I think, the less power you feel like you have to control any given situation. But you can always control your attitude, your effort, and your kindness. And those are three things that, again, and also getting hired out of school or, going to your first internship and competing, and you say, like, I don't have a lot of experience in this, but you can show them your attitude, your effort, your kindness. You can show up repeatedly. There's things that you can do to show your capacity to learn. But because I'm more interested in kind of in that rather than competence off the gate. Because I think more and more people are like that because we've all been given a chance at some point and you could live up to it or not, and hopefully live up to it. And then I've learned that, diversity is a fact, but that inclusion is a choice, and that is always the right choice. And so, and then just that, that North Star of mine has been that patriotism of benevolence, whatever position or project or group, or volunteerism, or, even now the way that I, talk to my kids about the problems that they're having, or the community groups that I invest time in. It's always towards the idea of having a responsibility towards the well-being of others. And I think if you have an expansive view towards what that means, then every career path is a pathway towards, social impact or, sustainability. That servant leader idea, or creating a just, equitable world. We can't all, there's a saying that says, they also serve who stand and wait. And that was really for military. I thought about that when I was a military spouse and my husband would deploy, and I would say, like, what am I doing? I'm like sitting here at home with these kids. But that's a service too. And I guess it's a bad transition or comparison to say, we can't all be the head of a nonprofit. We can't all be the head of a federal agency. We can't all be the head of a CEO. Of course, we can always strive towards that, but everything we do in our individual everyday lives will stack up to create, that better, more just, more caring, more equitable future. And I would rather have 10,000, mediocre sustainers than one who's really good at it and 9,999 that, gave up because they didn't see that direct path there.
So we have a lot of really great questions coming in from the audience. And just as a point of reference, it's about 36% Georgia Tech grad students, 27% Georgia Tech faculty and staff, 18% future GT students, and 19% Greater Atlanta community. So first question from the audience comes from Nicole, okay, looking at your LinkedIn, you co-founded a Blue Star Families that looks at issues affecting military families. What is the most underreported or misunderstood obstacle that military families face today in our country?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say, it's a joining military service is starting to be a family business, and which just means that, it's a very small, significant, it's a small portion of the population that's serving. And there are inevitable challenges that come with that. My husband deployed 5 times, our kids, especially when they were young. But I think that there's a larger cost to the majority of the nation if we're all not serving some greater purpose larger than our own well-being, and that does not have to be through the military, just through any kind of service, and there are a lot of outlets out there, and I know the National Corporation for Volunteerism, National Corporation for Volunteer, NCC. There's a federal agency out there that helps to create opportunities with AmeriCorps and Vista. I know that that's not necessarily hitting on what's a misunderstanding. I would say maybe just I just always like to say that, because I do think we talk about the military, but there are a lot of ways to serve, whether it's through the military or not, and that altruism is a very powerful force, and generosity and civic spirit are real. Like I said, I think those are our renewable resources that the more we flex, the more, I don't exercise a lot, but I assume that's how you grow muscle sets. But I would say that maybe one misunderstanding is just that that we don't have service members deployed overseas and in harm's way right now, and that Iraq is over. We still have families that are separated and service members on the front lines, and just and recognizing that we have gone to war as a country, but we haven't really gone to war as a country.
So here's another one. You mentioned a return on inclusion. I'm thinking this is coming from a grad student, but it's anonymous. Is that something you're working on quantifying, and how do you go about doing that?
I love that. It's a great question, and you can quantify it. And certainly, Deloitte and McKinsey and, several, in fact, I was going to say, can you give them my email? I would love to follow up afterwards, because if someone who asked that question definitely also has ideas. We look at, across the spectrum. We have engagement surveys. There's also, recruitment, there's retention, attrition, performance, engagement. There's it's called a net promoter score. How likely are you to recommend, Fiserv as an employer to a friend? How likely are you to recommend Fiserv as a client, or as a service provider to a client? There are those type of things. I think there's also, though, there's second and third order effects that are really I don't want to call them unquantifiable, because I would definitely want to get them into KPIs, so that when we get in front of, a board, we can talk very directly to it. But I think that there are some, inestimable, when you open when someone sees themselves reflected, like how do you calculate the loss of human capital because of self opt out, because they didn't see themselves reflected in your leadership and in your programming and your product. And that to me is more, because it's not a loss of revenue, it's a loss of opportunity. And I think that companies are getting that more and more. I mean, we're quantifying that more today, and I would love help with that if that's something that sparked a little interest there.
Mm-hmm. So I think we have time for one more question from the audience. How does military life transfer to the corporate sector, and what are habits that you leveraged, and what are the ones that you had to let go of?
You have to let go of cussing. No, I'm kidding. You can't cuss as much as you can in the Navy. If you're on time, you're late. That's a good one. Definitely translatable. I think that the military experience is it's seeing yourself as part of a team and knowing when to step up and be a leader, and when to follow based on the situation, and just kind of that empowered execution based on trust. it's those soft skills. I mean, I can, it's also it's, like a lot like millennials, you're so in tune with the digital economy and, you on the phones and just kind of evolving, like what's the next app or what's the next platform or what's the next, we're behind, how can you pay for gas in your car on the way, to pick up pizza that you ordered also from your car? How can you pay for parking in your car in the deck and, while on the way to pick up Chick-fil-A, that you ordered through an app? And how can you mobile deposit? These are all kind of, next gen things. And, I say next gen, they're like next minute. And some of them, exist now. And in the military, you're constantly doing that as well, because whatever system or platform you're using, you're constantly switching jobs. And you're able to have, and they call them collaterals jobs, which is very helpful when you transfer to the private sector. And you'll see on job descriptions, here's a heads up, it'll say other duties as assigned. And we're used to those in the military. And so, but I think just that sense of that esprit de corps is something that's eminently transferable. And you can, we see that in our military connected candidates. And also, I think veterans have a lot aligned with millennials in that they both populations are very committed to just that sense of, social that impact, the idea that being part of something bigger than yourself. You can imagine veterans get that through service, and millennials, all the research shows, you're picking companies based on that. You're picking where you work, where you shop, who you do business with. And I think it's all for the better. I'm here for it.
So do you have a couple more minutes? We have a couple of really quick questions we could probably work in. Okay. So you also mentioned think big, act small, move quick. Such a great quote. As I'm still at Georgia Tech, how do you suggest I use this motto to the best of my ability?
So that, and I can't take credit for that. That's the same guy who took a leap of faith and hired me for my first, job at First Day that told me that and tells me that. And what that is, you have that big goal. So think big, act fast, move quick, but have those smaller, get it down into bite-sized pieces. And so always be, if you know that the thing is and it could be whatever the thing is, if it's that you want to work at a Fortune 500, if it's that you want to start your own business, if it's that you want to move to Alaska, whatever that is, kind of we call that like building your own, I'm trying to think, building your own rocket ship, really. Just the idea that that's out there, but what direct steps can you take to get there? And what can you do today? And it's eating the bear one piece at a time, but without knowing kind of exactly what your end goal is, it's hard to then work, specifically back from that. But, setting yourself up, I would, it's forest for the trees for the forest. Don't lose where you want to go, just if it looks like you're taking a step back, which, we've all had to do. That line, everyone thinks that line to success is like this, but really it's, like this. And sometimes it's like way down there. But people only see the successful parts. And so it's hard to gauge, your own journey, based off what you're seeing, as success. And that's why I don't like saying like what's normal, because, normal is a setting on a dryer, which I don't even use because it's either you want them one or the other.
I use normal every time on the dryer, but that's
right.
just me. I think all my clothes are normal. So you mentioned a lot of t-shirts. You mentioned the importance of creating a safe space for courageous conversation. So given current events after the killing of George Floyd and many others, how did you work on creating that safe space for tough conversations at Fiserv? And how do you know that those initiatives are working?
That's a big question. And I don't think anyone has the, total answer. What you can do is, we created the forward together. We took in the Navy, you call it trading time out. because people are, I mean, people, it's very real feelings. It's been that have never been maybe shared before, especially in the private sector setting. But recognizing that how you live your life at home affects your ability to do your job, and that to think that someone would just be able to turn that on and off. But it's a lot of, conversations. We had listening sessions with all of our employee resource groups. We had listening sessions with our senior leaders, with our CEO. We had our employee resource groups. They met on their own and gave suggestions for our Forward Together plan, which focused on, it was internal and external. It was associates, clients, communities. It was, philanthropy, policies, people, to really write out, look at, if we're going to, stand out by what we stand for, we need to know what we stand for, and taking a, thoughtful time to really listen, and integrate that feedback into what our go forward, together was. And that's really how the Back to Business Grants program came out, because we knew that that was something that Fiserv can do that not a lot of companies can, that have the small business footprint, access to these enterprise clients where we can create a space for both. And it's receiving and giving, that psychological safety in teams is a very real thing, and you have to start from a place of trust before you can ask people to, be vulnerable. And I think it's not anything that's it's not one point of time. It's a continuous process. And I think we've, how we can see success is in, our associates' feedback and in our programming. And, I'd say we can always get better, but I personally feel very proud that, I feel like we have done the right things, but in the right ways that creates not just this moment. So next year, when something else happens, we won't have forgotten what happened right now, and we will have turned it into structural, strategic partnerships, policies, and procedures that if I leave, or, if anyone leaves, I'm not leaving, but if, that would live past any one person, because it's, ingrained into the very fabric of what we do and how we do it.
Mm-hmm. I actually attended a event that Frank Bisignano spoke at, the CEO, over the summer about racial justice, and I definitely felt like that opened the door to the conversation. So that's just like one anecdotal example.
That's awesome. I mean, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the great conversation tonight. Thanks for joining us. If you could give one call to action to the audience today to help expand their understanding and take action on social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion in their personal and professional lives, what would it be?
Well, besides voting, everyone should get out there and vote. That's like the easiest answer. But I would just go back to, in a world where you cannot control a lot, and it's volatile, and you can't predict the future, there are three things you can always control, and that is your attitude, your effort, and your kindness. And I think, my mom told me that when I was little. It still works now. I would tell that to, I'd tell that to my own kids, and I would share that with this group too.